Hello and welcome to the Sound on Sound podcast about electronic music and all things synth. I'm Caro C, and in this episode we're talking to Electric Indigo, a DJ, composer and musician based in Vienna who has performed in 45 countries across Europe, Asia and the Americas. Electric Indigo, aka Susanne Kirchmayr, represents an intelligent and distinguished interpretation of techno and electronic music. A key figure in the ecology of international techno DJs, Electric Indigo has been rocking dance floors since 1989, as well as working at Hardwax record shop in Berlin. In 1998, she founded the Transnational Female Pressure Network, which is how I met her around the year 2000. For a taste of Electric Indigo's music to get us started, here's Ferrum 7, from her album Ferrum, which was released on the highly esteemed Editions Mego label in 2020. So, Electric Indigo, very excited to have you on the Sound on Sound podcast today.
Thank you so much, Caro. I'm super happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Cool. Well, yeah, we've known each other for quite a few years via our work, mainly through the Female Pressure Network, which we'll talk about in due course. But I think we're going to have to start with the timeline, which actually I don't think you've ever told me in detail. So how did you even start as a DJ and then composer, producer, artist, and so much more?
Well, it was back in the 1980s. I was young and I liked to go out and I liked to dance a lot. And I was already buying records back then and exchanging tapes with friends and listening to music a lot and enjoying music a lot. And in one of my favorite bars in Vienna called Trabant, I saw like the usual suspects of Viennese nightlife, obviously just playing their favorite records. And I thought, well, I would love to do that as well, because I already had like a record collection. And I just asked the owners and they said, yes, let's give it a try. And yeah, so this is how I started out as a DJ. And it was under very, very low-key circumstances. They didn't even have like proper the turntables were proper, but they were not proper DJ turntables. They were belt-driven and there was no DJ mixer. And it was really just playing like one track after the other with small intervals in between for changing the record. Anyhow, I had a lot of fun, and then I got booked for like a proper club for dancing people. And back in the days, I was playing what we used to call black music. So it was like hip hop and funk and jazz, and it was a colorful mixture of records, and leading me to somehow a dead end, because at some point I was DJing for a year or so. I got a little bit fed up with playing only old records from the 70s and or mostly old records from the 70s, and the hip hop records that came out in 1990. I did not like them as much as the older, old school stuff before. So at some point, a DJ who worked in a record store called Black Market, like the London record store actually, he showed me a record by DJ Rush on Sabre Records. And I was like, Wow, what is that? Never heard something like this before. And to me, it felt like the essence of what I liked in dance music before, or in music I loved to dance to before. And that was like funk and bass and drums. And shortly after, I also came across, through the same person, DJ Gebel was his artist name, an early underground resistance record. And then it was like completely clear, because I was already a fan of Public Enemy, for example, and there was, for me, there was a strong relation between that kind of hip hop and early underground resistance records. So I oriented myself towards the German techno scene, because I saw a lot more possibilities there. And also I saw the better parties, and I saw the better DJs there. And as soon as I made my first step as a customer into the Hardwax record store in Berlin, it was totally clear. Okay, this is where I want to be, and I want to work at Hardwax, and this is my destination, so to say. I totally knew 100% where I wanted to be. And it took a couple of years, but finally in 1993, I got a call from Mark Ernestus, the boss of Hardwax, if I could do like a holiday replacement work in the back room, packing mail order packages. And I was in Vienna when I received the call, and pretty much the next day, here I am. That's why and how I moved to Berlin in 93, where I stayed for 3 years. And in these 3 years, they like this work at Hardwax record store, and being in Berlin around that time in the first half of the 1990s very much coined me as an artist. So these were really important years to me.
Yeah, your most formative years, and a very fertile time for the genre as well, wasn't it? So you were working at the shop and then playing in clubs at the same time, and obviously becoming embedded into the ecosystem, if you like.
Yeah, a funny biographical side note is, when I left for Vienna for Berlin, I had completely run out of money, and I had to cover a credit card bill, and had to go to my bank and tell them, well, I don't have a job, and I don't have any money left, but I need credit to pay the credit card bill. And they asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, well, I will become a DJ, a successful DJ. So time will come soon that I can pay you back from my income as a DJ. And somehow I must have been convincing, because they gave me the credit on that word,
Brilliant. And it happened.
It happened. Yes, it happened.
And then did you start to produce your own techno as well at that time?
Yeah, it started as soon as I got involved in the German techno scene. Like, people were really eager to release music by me. I think they thought it was quite I had some sort of unique selling proposition, being this young woman with bald head, playing hard techno. They thought that was quite attractive as a marketing thing. So I was very soon asked whether I could make some music or do some music. So people were very supportive and inviting. And I started out making music in other people's studios. So I went to I remember one of the first studio sessions was with Richard Bartz for Disco B Records. Same people who were the first ones who invited me to play as a techno DJ in Munich. In particular, Peter Wacher, aka Upstart, the owner of Disco B and one of the main persons in charge for the parties and the clubs where I played in Munich. And I produced one of the very early tracks with Richard Bartz. It was a split EP with DJ Hell, whom I was very close friends with back in the days. Or other people I collaborated with were Patrick Pulsinger and Adam Tunakan from Vienna, and we recorded a record that was put out in 93, Experimental, which was a record label from New York, Damon Wild's record label, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so I also went to the studio quite often with the people who were from Frankfurt, Cologne area, Dr. Walker and his Jungle Fever camp, I would call it. Since I traveled to New York really often and I also played there quite often as a DJ, I was working with Khan Oral several times, and we invented all these project names. For example, the Loisaida sisters, because Khan lived in the Lower East Side, and the Hispanic population there didn't call it Lower East Side, but made it like a short word, Loisaida. So we were the Loisaida sisters, and yeah, it was very, very easygoing. We, jam sessions in the studio. I turned some knobs and pressed some buttons to program patterns on drum machines, and then long sessions were recorded on digital audio tape, and maybe just 7 minutes or 10 minutes were taken to be pressed on the record.
So it was mainly hardware, drum machines, synths.
Exactly, yeah. And a DAT recorder. That was it. And most of the times I remember it was Mackie mixer, all in the reds with heavy distortion. And I love that sound.
And then I think it was the late 90s when you founded Female Pressure. Could you tell us what that is and why you felt there was a need for it?
Well, touring as a DJ, and I did travel a lot, and I did play like several gigs every weekend. I encountered so many comments about my gender and me being a DJ, and people being astonished or uttering these backhanded compliments on the quotation marks, like, "Oh, you're really good for a woman." And I noticed that every female colleague of mine has experienced similar reactions. That was one side. The other side was that I was regularly asked about other female DJs or women who are active as artists in electronic music and club culture. So I got a bit annoyed by the fact that almost every time I played out, I had to name other DJs, my female colleagues. And you must imagine it's like 3 a.m. and I'm shortly before a DJ set and trying to concentrate, or just like after it and a little bit exhausted and happy and want to party or whatever. And it's late and it's 110 dB, and it's really not the ideal circumstances for deep conversations and exact conversations. And oftentimes I woke up the next day and you know, when you reflect on conversations you had the night before, you think of something that did not come into your mind like when it was necessary. And I was like, how could I forget, I don't know, Monika Kruse when they asked me about other women in the business. Anyhow, I felt the need to systematize my answers, and I wanted to be able to refer to a knowledge resource that people can access relatively independently from time and space. At the same time, in the second half of the 90s, it became totally obvious that the internet is going to be like a very important medium. And I thought, it would be ideal to have an online database. Of course, it took me a while to realize this initial idea. When Female Pressure first went online, it was just a simple HTML list because I did not know any people who could program a database, an online database. But still, that's how it started. And since then, a lot has changed. But nevertheless, since the beginning, for example, I wanted to include visual artists because I think club culture and electronic music is really like very connected to people who make graphic design or who make video art that is being played in clubs or for music videos, etc. So from the beginning, it was not only DJs. Actually, it was also not only women or let's say biological women. So there was not as explicit as it is now, and certainly not as reflected as it is now. But for me, Female Pressure was never about the biological sex. It was more about the gender, or it was only about the gender. The reason why I did it is because people did not know about other women or hardly knew about other women. But nowadays it has become a network of almost 2,900 people from 85 countries. Most of the people, like 3/4, live in Europe. And the next biggest part is, I think, about 17% of the people live in the USA and in Canada. We are not only DJs, I already mentioned that, and music producers, but now we also include other people who are important for the infrastructure or for the whole scene, like booking agents or some journalists or researchers. And oftentimes, members of the network actually have several professions. They are DJs, but they are also researchers, for example. And this is reflected in the database. What else is important? Yeah, how to become a member of Female Pressure is quite easy. You just have to send an email to info@femalepressure.net. And then I will answer. This is the current process. We're working on an update, but currently this is how it has been for the past over 20 years. I will answer with an email that explains what Female Pressure is about and what it is not, because some people expect it to be like a booking agency, and that this is not something I can deliver. It also includes a couple of questions that I need to be able to create the entry in the database. I create the entry in the database and I send a member a login info. So theoretically, the whole database could be up to date, but as a matter of fact, everyone, including myself, often forgets about updating the entry. So yeah, that is the idea. And it grew to much more. We started to do special projects, and one of the most important ones is, for example, our fact survey, where we've been analyzing gender distribution in electronic music festival lineups since 2012. So we can look at data for already 10 years and analyze trends. And we just this year in March, we published our fifth report, and also a lot of other projects.
But I mean, yeah, the landscape's changed so much, hasn't it? I think there's so much more support for women or gender minorities, non-conforming genders, to kind of rise up or to emerge or develop at the same time as I remember how important it was. I think I joined about 2000, 2001. And for me, it was the mailing list, really. There was something as I was emerging, I was a fledgling artist, finding my confidence, finding my sound, just knowing that there's all these other people doing it in their own way. There was something, it must have been a kind of support for you as well.
It's so great to hear these individual stories. I love that, because most of the times I don't know how people get to know about female pressure, or how the effect is that the network has. It's rare that I hear it from first-hand experiences. And you mentioned the mailing list, and I forgot to mention that because I think it's our most important tool. It's for internal communication, and often it's only like news about artists that post like, I have a new record out or a new mix is online, but it happens also that we discuss things, and it's a constant source of learning for me. And I also would love to mention that female pressure over the more than 2 decades has become intersectional in the approach of feminism that we do. So we have a very strong anti-racist aspect now to our network, and I think that's really important, as well as trans inclusiveness. And it's not always easy, of course, and because there are so many people with different backgrounds and in different stages of their development. Seeing that we include people from 85 countries, there is a huge language barrier, of course. Not everyone is confident in talking about delicate subjects in English, because not everyone's mother tongue is English. There are challenges, but I think we navigate quite well.
Yeah, and I think you realise there's real diversity. We've had discussions about topless DJs, we've had discussions about loads of different things, but it's really interesting to see all the different views as well.
Indeed, yeah.
Am I right in thinking that you've gravitated more towards experimental listening music rather than making music for the dance floor these days?
I'd definitely say so, but I would even state that as it happened often in my career and in my life, that I circumstantially had some turns in my career or turns in my attention or activities. And I was invited, for example, for the first time to play live. I was invited for a festival called Here I Am in Vienna. And the curator of the program, she put me together with a improvisation, experimental avant-garde violinist called Mia Zabelka. And that was the first time to play live, and it was not for the dance floor, but it was in an improv avant-garde kind of context. So only in the past few years, I have the feeling that the two strands of my musical activities, one being like the club DJ and the other one being making weird music, are coming closer together both ways. So in my DJ sets, I change the techniques. I don't play with vinyl anymore, but I love to play with CDJs, and I prepare my tracks on the flash drive, and I'm really a huge fan of these machines. So I'm able now to add really quite experimental or noisy stuff at times in my dance floor DJ sets with these like new possibilities that opened up to me through the modern CDJs. On the other hand, I'm now more capable of making my experimental stuff a bit more danceable, I could say. I'm still not finished in that process, and I don't know if I ever will, but I feel that there is more potential of combining these two things in an original and meaningful way, which makes me quite happy, because before that, there was always the risk of disappointing every side, the side who know me as a DJ when I play live. That's not as she DJs, potentially. I mean, I never heard that explicitly, but I can imagine.
So tell us about what some of your current projects are. I know that you were saying you've gone more modular. You were quite into granular synthesis at one point.
Yeah, I'm still very much into granular synthesis. Just lately, I combine it with super cute small modular rig that I assembled as a new set of instruments, actually, and I think it works quite well, in particular live. I did a couple of live sets recently where I played a new work that was just released on Ventil Records called Brittle. And it's a composition from, I think, 2020 already. It premiered as an online performance a while ago, and finally now it is released. It's the newest release of mine. It's a 30 minutes composition, and it has 4 parts, and it's quite experimental sound explorations. And I played Brittle live in an extended version where I combine it with a few modules, and it's surprising how well it works together and how much fun I have playing that live, because I go back to improvise when I play live. And that reminds me of the old days when I first used to play live with my old gear, where you cannot save, or mostly cannot save any presets. And you have to either remember or write it down. But now it's a lot more refined. And I think from the reactions I get, I think it's also quite original. That's a great thing to get as a feedback, that even if some people are maybe a bit startled because they cannot put it easily in a category, it's a great feedback for me to have, because that raises my artistic value in my own eyes.
And is that all linked to Ableton?
Yes, actually, I use Ableton Live as a big mixing tool then, and I have parts of my sounds coming still made with granular synthesis from Ableton, and I have some live inputs and outputs connecting it with the modular, and I also mix a little bit on the modular itself, but just for the internal sounds from the rig. Yeah, just recently added another cable so that I can use one of the modular effects, the Imitor Versio from Noise Engineering, as an external effect. It goes back and forth, and to connect Ableton with the modular and to sync it or to make it play when I want it to play, I also use the CV tool pack that there is. So I can send triggers and modulations sometimes to my modular. It's fun. I love it.
And in terms of multi-channel work, I remember you telling me that you'd won a prize in Austria, which meant you could buy yourself a very nice, I think, Genelec multi-channel setup. So tell me more about how you're working with that medium.
Yeah, I've been creating multi-channel pieces for quite some while, mostly without hearing what I was imagining, because I did not have the speaker setup at home in my studio. And I won the Kunstpreis Musik, which is like the second highest art award that the Republic of Austria has to give away. And that came in the middle of the pandemic in 2020. And that was, of course, super uplifting to get it. And I bought 6 small Genelecs in addition to my 2 bigger Genelecs and stands, so I can actually have like a 8-channel surround setup at home, which is great. And I use that to spatialize Ferrum. And since then, it's quite absurd. Brittle, the new piece that just came out on Ventil Records, originally was supposed to be premiered at the Arts University in Graz, Austria, where they have a dome with a extensive multi-channel setup. But due to the pandemic, that plan got cancelled, and it was clear it's going to be an online premiere, streaming premiere. So I did not even compose it for multi-channel. I find it quite difficult to adapt a stereo piece to multi-channel. It often does not really make sense, apart from it can be nice to add some effects, for example, to have like 2 pitch loop 89 effects and route one to the front channels and the other one to the back channels, and they are similar but not the same. So you have some trippy delay effects, immersive delay effects that can be really nice. But other than that, I think it's a completely different thing to compose something for multi-channel or for stereo. So since Brittle was not composed for multi-channel but for stereo, now I don't perform it in multi-channel. And I have not been using my sweet Genelec surround setup since Ferrum, which was in 2020.
So what sound card do you prefer for your multi-channel work?
I always use the Moto MK4 because it has so many outputs and also 8 inputs. And that's quite useful for my purposes.
Cool. I wonder if we can finish with a bit of information about any projects at the moment that you're excited about, any kind of future directions that you're looking forward to.
Yes, yes, definitely. I think I partly already mentioned like how much I'm enjoying to play with my really small modular rig.
Tell us what you got.
Let me have a look. I have a lot of fun with the Ultra Random Analog by SSL, if I'm not mistaken. I have the mutable instrument plats, and I love to connect these two. So to have like random changes in the pitch and random triggers. In particular with plats, I love the plucked strings algorithm and the chords algorithm. This is really nice. The chords algorithm, that's extremely sweet because it adds a dimension to my usually quite dry music. It adds a nice harmonic dimension that I did not have much so far, but in a sophisticated way. So it's not the usual arpeggio up and down melodic thing, but it's different. And I love to play with that. Then I have my favorite dual filter, the Corgasmotron. I already mentioned the Imitor Versio delay. And I also love to route just the noises from the ultra random analog into the delay and play around with that. Then I have the famous Basimilus Iteritas Alter from noise engineering as well, a Döpfer Wasp filter, nice dual CVA that I can also use as a sort of submixer. I have a Submix 6, which is very useful for playing live because I can route both the dry signal and the signal into the Imitor Versio. And then I have a Quadrax filter as well. And a couple of multiples. And this is like my current live setup. And I got a very interesting request from a very sympathetic label if I wanted to make a new album. And since I lost my last label, Editions Mego, because unfortunately almost a year ago, Peter Rehberg suddenly died.
Oh, so the label won't continue?
Well, they will continue to sell the back catalog, and they did the releases that were already in the pipeline, but they won't do any new releases. And this is a huge loss, not only for me, but for the whole music world, I think, because it was so unique what Peter dared to do and was able to do because of the thing that he had built up. Very, very special. But luckily, there are some other sympathetic, nice labels around. And I recently got a request whether I was interested to release an album with them. And I am very interested, and I'm very keen to elaborate with the modular setup that I have here and use what I have here as some sort of limitation to make an album out of it.
Fantastic. We have to finish there, unfortunately. All the best with continuing to grow your sound world, balancing it with your international professional DJing, as well as your advocacy work for women in electronic art scene.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Caro.
Thank you for listening, and be sure to check out the show notes for further information, as well as links and details of other episodes in the electronic music series. And just before you go, let me point you to soundonsound.com/podcasts so you can check out what's on our other channels. This has been a Caro C production for Sound on Sound.